Hello everybody, this is my video entry into Robert Z's lottery this year. He's got a lottery going on where you can win quite a few records if you was decided to make a video entry, but the deadline is tomorrow, so I'm kind of running a little bit late, but I'm going to make a go of this. I've been sick, I sound terrible, you probably can tell, but I'm going to make a go of this, and it might be edited quite a bit because I got a pretty bad cough, so let's roll on with this. He's got 10 questions, and here's the 10 questions. Question number 1, he's wanting you to throw a Christmas party, and if you do throw a Christmas party, he wants you to invite 3 musical guests to be at your party, and they all 3 have to be deceased, dead. So he said just pick any 3 artists that you would like to have at your Christmas party, and let's see, my 3 are Freddie Mercury, David Bowie, and Dean Martin. I just think those 3 would be fun to have around. Freddie Mercury, of course, is a blast. David Bowie, and I love Dean Martin, especially around Christmas and all them old shows he used to have. Had a good time watching him growing up, and he was a blast, and he liked to party and drink, so I'm sure all of us would have a good time. Question number 2, what song that if you never heard again, that it would just, you'd be fine with that? You can't stand this song, when you hear it, you're like, oh God. Well, I'm probably gonna get a lot of flack from this, because I'm not a big fan of this band, and I ain't gonna say they're bad, just not my thing. I just never could really get into them. There's one song though that was played all the time, over and over, everywhere on the radio, you heard it everywhere. I just never liked it, and it's Smells Like Teen Spirit by Nirvana. I just never was a Nirvana fan. That song was, I hated it the worst. I'm not saying they're bad, everybody's got their own thing, but to me, in that era, Pearl Jam was hands above a better band than Nirvana, just my personal opinion. But yeah, I could do without listening to that song anymore. Question number 3, one album that if you could hear again for the first time, and you would like to relive that moment when you first heard that album one more time without ever hearing it before. If you could relive that moment, what would it be? What album would it be? You know, I thought about that, and there were several albums that I could put on this list. Several of them come to mind, but I picked this one because it's a little different, and it's a band I never hardly play much on my channel or talk about, but they're an excellent band, one of my favorite bands, and I really like them. And it's this album. Well, let me back up, tell you how it started. Back in the 80s, you remember the records, the record clubs, that you could pay a penny and get 10 or 11 albums for a penny. You get them 10 or 11 albums, but you had to pick, they sent you one album a month and you had to buy it. But if you didn't want to buy it, you could back out of it, but you had to let them know that you didn't want that album. But if you didn't back out of it, they went ahead and sent it to you, and you had to buy it, which I backed out of a lot of them, you know, because back in those days where I live, there was no record stores. You know, you had to be in Franklin, 5 and Dime, and they just had the big hits, you know, in the record stores. But if you wanted something different, you had to order it. So that's where I got a lot of my records back in the day, was through those record clubs. But anyway, I forgot to decline that month's pick, and they went ahead and sent it to me. And during those days, in the real early 80s, I guess it was real early 80s, I don't know when this come out, but it was in the early 80s. When I got it, you know, I was rock and roll then. I was all into metal and everything, hard rock. And I got the album, and it was this one right here, The Kinks. Come Dancing with the Kinks, the best of the Kinks, 1977 through 86. They sent this to me. You know, and I knew who the Kinks was. I never really give them a lot of attention. I knew the songs, the hits, you know, and stuff, but never really give them a lot of attention. But when I got it, it was a vinyl record, this is the CD, of course, but I had the vinyl record back then. So I played it, and I loved it. I was like, gosh, oh, I was missing out. I mean, there's a lot of good songs on here. A lot of good songs. I mean, there's a lot of songs on here, and a lot of them I had never heard before at the time. So it kind of turned me on to going deep diving into the Kinks, because, you know, at that time I was real heavy into rock and roll, hard rock, you know, and when I listened to this album, you know, the live versions on here of You Really Got Me Now, and let's see, what was the other, Lola live version on here, man, they rocked out on this. I couldn't believe how hard they was rocking. I was like, golly, I've missed the boat on this band. So I started checking them out pretty deep, and I liked about everything they got. But I'd like to relive that moment when I played that, and I was like, man, you know, I was missing the boat on this. But that'd be fun to relive that again. So I thought that was a little different. So we'll move on to the next one. Question number 4. If you could pick 4 artists to put on this Mount Rushmore art piece for your music room, you could pick 4 artists that you'd like to have this art piece made with these artists on there, like a Mount Rushmore type sculpture, who would you put on there? Well, for me, first of all, it'd be Dio, Ronnie James Dio. Man, what a voice. Powerful, powerful voice. And he would be one. Another one would be Ian Gillan, another powerful voice. I like a lot. You know, these are the guys and girls that I just love to listen to. You know, good bands, good music. So it'd be Ronnie James Dio, Ian Gillan, Robert Plant, of course, with Led Zeppelin. I mean, those vocals were amazing. And for a female, I'd have to put Doro Pesch up there, because I like her a lot too. So those would probably be my Mount Rushmore. Channel theme song, question number 5. I believe it's number 5. Let's see. Yep, question number 5. Channel theme song, what would it be? Well, you know, my favorite band is going to have to be Jethro Tull, and probably the song Jumpstart from this album right here. This is off of the In Concert album. This is an import. It come out in 91. I know I purchased this when it first came out, so I've had this CD that long. But it's live in Hammersmith, October the 8th, 1991. Yep. But the live version on here of Jumpstart, man, it's killer. It's rocking. You know, I like the song. It originally came out on Crest of Nave, but you know, and I liked it then. But now this live version on here, it's a lot more rocking. And this whole album's good. If for a live Jethro Tull album, this is a rocking album. And that Jumpstart on here, I love it. It's got the killer guitars. Ian's vocals are great on this. It's just a good, hard-driving rock and roll tune. So this would probably be a good song for my theme song on my channel. Okay, this is question number 6. He's wanting you to throw this big, colossal concert with the main attractions being bands from the era of the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s. He wants you to pick those main acts, and you know, you could have it anywhere. Just pick those acts, some big colossal place, probably like, you know, I'd have to pick like Bristol International Raceway, because it's close to my house, so I could drive right there. Why not? So with the 60s, it's going to have to be Rolling Stones, because I mean, they're a killer band. Everybody knows their music. They ain't got a bad song. Rock and roll, killer rocking band, just good time music. So definitely 60s is going to be the Rolling Stones. 70s is going to be Deep Purple. The early 70s Deep Purple with Ian Gillan vocals. I love that era. Of course, I like it all, but that's my favorite. They could really rock, man. He got some killer tunes, and that'd be a killer 70s. That'd be my 70s lineup right there. And then 80s would be ZZ Top, because in the 80s, I mean, they had killer hits. Everybody had know their songs, and they even, you know, all through the 70s had just a good band. Got to see them several times in the 80s and early 90s, and each time they were just awesome band. They sounded great. It sounded just like you was putting a CD on or a record on, listening to them live. I mean, they was a tight band. So I do them in the 80s, era of the 80s. And in the 90s would probably have to, you know, the 90s I had to think about, but I'm gonna go with this right here, The Four Horsemen. This is the only album they got. It come out in the early 90s, and man, it's a rocking album. If you've never heard this band, The Four Horsemen, you need to get this album and check it out. If you like hard driving, hard rock and roll, just straight up in your face rock and roll, right there it is. And they'd be my band for the 90s. Why? Because I like them. You know, the 90s was a little different for me, you know, the grunge and everything going on. So, you know, I never really was big into grunge. I love Pearl Jam, but, you know, just wasn't happy rock, you know. To me, it wasn't. But this right here puts you in a good mood listening to this now. Rock and roll. Four Horsemen. If you've never heard it, check it out. So that'd be my 90s artist. And in the 2000s would definitely have to be Nightwish. They're a heavy, real heavy gothic kind of operatic band. Got great singer, Tarja. She's a great singer. Got an opera style voice, and the band is really tight and just a good all. You know, they got a killer version of here on this album, Over the Hills and Far Away. They done a killer version of that. So if you've never heard any Nightwish, you need to check them out. That would be my 2000s band. So yeah, I think that'd be a pretty good show. What do y'all think? Question number 7. What are you going to do with your record collection when you leave this world? Well, when you're gone, you're gone, you know. I would love for somebody in my family to take it, like one of my grandchildren, and take interest in it and be a music fanatic like I am. Right now, they don't really seem to show too much interest in it. One kind of does a little bit, but you know, I'd like for one of them to take it. I'd definitely leave it to them. But if there's no interest, you know, I just leave it to the kids and let them sell it, get some money out of it, whatever. Have a big yard sale, you know, just sell it, you know, get the money out of it. Ain't no sense in sitting here and just letting it sit. Let somebody else listen to it, you know. Let people pilfer through it and say, "Oh man, check this out," you know. You know, just let somebody else have it. Question number 8. Show your grail or grails. You know, I just don't. That word got used a lot and still gets used a lot. I just don't have any grails. I mean, I don't have any. I don't have that one album that I was searching for and just found it out of the blue and like a holy grail. Where I don't have that one thing. It's, you know, I don't have a grail. I guess I got a lot of albums I love and a lot I found that I was tickled to death to find. But a holy grail to me, that's a hard one. I don't have it. So I chose this one for sentimental reasons. This is a grail to me sentimentally because it belonged to my grandmother, and she liked this band. Of course, she liked several bands. She liked music a lot, so I'm gonna call this a grail. Bill Black's Combo, and I enjoy it. It sounds really nice. It's got a great sound to it. It's on this High Records right here. It's really clean sounding, crisp, and it's a good record, and I like it. So I'm gonna pick that as my grail for sentimental reasons, because when she passed away, she had a few records left in her collection, and I got them because nobody else really wanted them. But I remember her listening to this, and I remember her liking, I think it was Rambler on here. And there was another one, but I can't remember right offhand, but I remember this one. She liked several other bands as well, of the 50s and 40s and stuff. But so I'm going to choose this as my grail. Question number 9. Who is your absolute favorite music artist, and when did you know? Well, most everybody here knows my favorite artist, Jethro Tull. when did I know? Early 80s. And I knew Jethro Tull before that and during that time, and I liked his music, but I never really dug into it. And I was at a friend of mine's house, and his older sister had moved out recently, and his parents was gone, and we was there drinking, just having a good time, and listening to records and just doing what young kids do, you know. And I went to her record collection and I pulled out this album right here. Heavy Horses. Well, this album right here, when I pulled that out and listened to it, I remember asking him, I said, "You like this?" And he's like, "Hell no, I don't like that shit." And I said, "Well, let's listen to it." So we put it on there and I listened to it. And he really didn't want to listen to too much of it. But I could tell when I listened to it, I thought, well, I like this pretty good, you know. But I didn't get to listen to it real good at that time because, you know, he just wouldn't let me. I listened to a few songs of it, but I remember I liked it then just by listening to those few songs on here. I think one of them was Moths, and it got my attention, and The Mouse Police Never Sleeps. That was one. I just remember those songs got my attention real good, you know, and I was like, man, I'm gonna have to check that. So I went straight and bought it just a few days later and loved it. Loved this whole album from start to finish. Probably one of my favorite Jethro Tull albums. And from that point on, I started going back, listening to all his real early stuff, which a lot of the hits I knew, but I didn't know none of the other stuff. So I just fell in love with Jethro Tull, listening to all the stuff from the 60s all the way through the 70s and up to this, and then real early 80s. And then every time he would come out with an album in the 80s, I was always anxious to get it and listen to it, you know. And so that's when I found out I liked Jethro Tull, and I've liked him ever since, and been getting all of his albums ever since, and he's still going to this day. His voice is has a little wear and tear, but you know, hey, we all get a little old, you know. We all get older. Shit happens. Shit falls apart. But he's still got that good music writing, and the music is great. And even on his latest album, his voice sounds pretty daggone good. So if you've not heard the latest Jethro Tull, you ought to check it out. But yeah, Heavy Horses was my start to Jethro Tull. So question number 10. He wants to know a wish list. You know, 3 or more albums that you know you'd like to have. Like maybe if you won this lottery, somebody might be watching this and they might just send you one of these. I don't know, but he wants to know a wish list, 3 or more. So I'm going to go with the new Royal Thunder album. If you've not heard it, it's called Rebuild the Mountain. And she's got a mountain of a voice, man. She kind of reminds me of a female Blackie Lawless. She's got a good rocking voice, and she can really belt out some tunes. And they're from Atlanta. Her name's Minnie Parsna, I believe. Parsons or something like it. Minnie Parsons is her name. But check them out. That would be one. And the new Blood Ceremony album. The name of it is The Old Ways Remain. It's new. They're kind of like a Jethro Tull, but it's female fronted. She plays the flute. Kind of psychedelic rock. Pretty good band. I like them pretty good. And the new Tigers of Pantane, Bloodlines. I like that one. Probably going to be getting these albums. I'm probably going to be getting anyway, but I'm going to put these on the wish list. Sometime or another, I'm going to pick them up. And then probably another one, that the new Janet Gardner from Vixen, the No Strings album. I'll probably pick that up sometime. Don't know when, but those are about 3 or 4 on my wish list right now. So if you don't know Robert Z, you need to get over and check his channel out. He's been around this community for a long time. His channel, he'll delete it and he'll come back, and he'll delete it and he'll come back, but he's always around, and he's a good person. He's a hoot. He's fun to watch, and he's just a good person. But go check him out, and if you got time, which you only got one more day, enter this contest. You can win a lot of records. So y'all take care.